Greeting and salutations. I am Lloyd, a producer at LCD Productions, and I have come to share this new series of visual audiobooks with you, the listener, the supporter, the viewer. Together we will go on a journey like never before, fly to new heights with Project Aerospace, explore new land and cityscapes with photations, even change the dimension of time through the power of time-lapse photography from live to tape. We'll even travel beyond the mind's eye into worlds captured and generated through animation from Thumbs United daily animation series. As we together go on these journeys filled with photography and theater of the mind, I hope you remember the core belief that we hold, that anyone can become the master of art, meaning that it is not some born skill what makes someone good at being creative. It is a desire to practice and spend time being creative that creates the master. I hope that these films, photography, and stories inspire you to set some time aside and practice some creativity. I believe if we all spend more time creating and being constructive, the world would be a better place, a more friendlier and fulfilling place. Thank you for coming. Let's begin this journey. This is Live to Tape in partnership with Project Aerospace for the visual audiobook of the Girl Aviators and the Phantom Airship. Chapter 19, Brother and Sister. The first gleam of the summer dawn shining into Roy's place of imprisonment at the bottom of the old well revealed to him only too clearly into what a trap he had fallen. The well seemed to be about 50 feet or more in depth, and the sides were smooth and slippery. The chill he had felt spreading through his limbs earlier was gone now, but a numb sensation was getting in, which did not leave them even when the boy wriggled his legs about. Phew, thought Roy, I stand a fair chance of being turned into a pollywog or something if I stay here long enough. Somehow, with the coming of the daylight, the buoyant spirits of the youth had returned to the boy, and his predicament did not seem nearly so serious as it had during the dark hours. But it was bad enough, as Roy realized from time to time. He tried shouting, but no one came to the edge of the well and peered over, although he anxiously kept his eyes reverted to the disk of the sky above him. How long this went on Roy had no idea, but he had sunk into a sort of semi-doze when a sound aroused him, a tinkling metallic sound not unlike the rattling of the chain of the night before had in reality caused his trouble. Help, help, shouted Roy. It was perhaps 500th time he had uttered the cry since he had stumbled into the well, but this time there was a response. What is it? What's the trouble? The voice sounded rather shaky, as if the utter of the words was somewhat scared. It's a boy who has fallen into the well, shouted Roy. I'm almost exhausted. Get me out. A face suddenly projected over the well curb, a face which Roy recognized with astonishment as that of old Peter Bell, the hermit. Mr. Bell, it's Roy Prescott, he shouted. Can you get a rope and get me out? Good heavens, cried the hermit. It's the boy whose sister was so kind to me. However did you... But never mind. Now, can you hold on for a time? Yes, but my strength is almost gone. We'll summon up all your courage. There's a farmhouse not far off. I'll go there and get a rope and be back as quick as I can. Without wasting more words, the old man hastened his little cart and had been out since gathering herbs and roots, had taken a short cut home through the field in which the old well was located. Muttering excitedly to himself, he climbed somewhat swiftly into his rickety conveyance and urged his horse forward with gentle spoken commands. As the animal broke into a trot, the little bell about its neck began to jangle, not unmusically. This was the sound which fortunately for him, had notified Roy that some human being was at hand. In the near distance, half hidden in the trees, could be seen the red-roofed gable of a farmhouse. Toward this Peter Bell directed his way. Farmer Ingalls was only too glad, when he heard of the incident, to secure a long rope used in hoisting hay to the top of his barn. Bless my soul, he exclaimed. A lad tumbled into my well? Mummers, turning to a motherly-looking calico-clad woman. You always told me to cover that well up, and I never did, and now that poor young chap tumbled into it. Hurry, urged old Peter Bell. He was almost exhausted, poor lad. We must get back as quick as possible. Summoning his 2 hired men, the farmer set off to run across the field, easily keeping pace with old Peter's decrepit horse. As they neared the well, they began shouting, and a feeble cry from the depths answered them. Cheer up, my lad. We have you out of that in a brace of shakes, cried Farmer Ingalls encouragingly as they reached the curb and peered over into the dark hole. I hope you will, cried Roy. It's getting pretty monotonous, I can tell you. Don't know what monotonous means, but I hate to change places with you, agreed the farmer. Presently the rope came shaking down with a loop in its lower end. Roy was directed to place his foot in the loop and hold on tight. When this had been done, he shouted out, All right, haul away. The steward farmer and his 2 assistants began to heave with all their might, while old Mr. Bell encouraged them. Before long, a dint of hard exertion, they succeeded in dragging Roy to the surface, and dripping and shivering, he could stand once more in the blessed air and sunlight. But how in the world did you come to get in there? Asked the farmer, as he placed along the side of the hermit's little cart, in which the half-exhausted Roy had been placed. Well, said the lad with a rather shameful laugh, I really half ashamed to say, but it was this way. Some bad men who have an interest in putting me out of an airplane contest, of which Mr. Bell knows, had run off with me in an automobile. It was wrecked and I escaped. I struck out toward the town as I thought, but as I came through that patch of woods by the wall, I saw something that startled me so much that I stepped back and fell down the well. What did you see, my lad? Asked the farmer with a half-twinkle in his eyes. Something that looked like a storybook ghost, smiled Roy. It was tall and all in white, and clinked a chain. Ah, ha, ha, roared the farmer. I half suspected as much. Why, that ghost was my old white Mueller boxer. He managed to somehow snap his chain last night, and we found him careening around the fields this morning. Don't color up, my boy, for poor Roy's face had turned very red at the hired men guffawing loudly. Older men than you have been startled at far less, and now here's the farm, and I bet your mummer has a fine breakfast ready for you. The half-famished boy ate hungrily of the substantial farmhouse fare Miss Ingalls provided for him, and as he ate he made inquiries about the distance to the aviation grounds, which he found, to his dismay, were further distant than he had imagined. I'll never be able to make it in time without an automobile, moaned Roy to himself. What shall I do? He cast about in his mind for some way out of his difficulty, but he could find none, nor could the farmer help him. There was no automobiles in this part of the country, and in a horse-drawn vehicle he would never be able to make it in time. All at once a queer sound filled the air. The atmosphere seemed to vibrate as with it did on a still summer day when a threshing machine is buzzing away in the distant field. Land, oh gosh, and what is that? Cried Mrs. Ingalls, running to the door. Lish, come here quick, shouted the next instant, followed by the old hermit and Roy. Mr. Ingalls ran to the door, but his exclamations at the sight he saw drowned by Roy's amazement cry. It's the golden butterfly. An airplane, shouted the farmer. By gosh, she's like a pretty bird. It's our airplane, went on Roy. Who can be in it? Oh, if only if it's Peggy, I may not be too late after all. He ran out into the dooryard of the farm and house, snatching off his coat, beginning to wave it desperately. Would the occupant of the airplane see his frantic signal? With a beating heart, Roy watched the winged machine as it droned far above him. All at once he gave a delighted shout. The airplane was beginning to descend. Down it came in big circles, while the farmer and his wife and old hermit gazed open-mouthed at it as it half inclined to run. But as it drew closer to the ground, Roy noticed a puzzling thing. The helmeted and goggled person driving it, evidently a boy or man, and not Peggy at all. Who could it be? For an instant a queer thought flashed through his head. Possibly someone had stolen it and was making off cross-country with it so as to put it out of the race. More and more rapidly the airplane began to drop as it neared the ground, and before many minutes it aligned in a patch of meadow in front of the farmhouse, gliding gracefully for several feet before it stopped. But the rubber-tired landing gear had not ceased revolving before Roy was at its side. "Say, who are you, and what are you doing with my airplane?" demanded in heated tones, for the helmeted aviator had not even been to notice him, but seemed to be busy with various levers and valves. "Well, are you going to answer me?" sputtered Roy, while the farmer and his wife, the old hermit, and the hired man gazed on curiously. For answer, the mysterious aviator raised his helmet, and a cloud of golden curls fell about the milk-enrosed face. "By gum, a gal, and a purty one," cried the farmer, capering about. "Peggy," shouted Roy. "Yes, Peggy," cried the girl. "Oh, Roy, what has happened to you? When you didn't come back, Jess and Jimsy persuaded me to put on your clothes and at least try the butterfly out, but it was so miserable that I could not try her out on the track, so I flew across country. I saw you waving far below me, and oh, Roy." Peggy could go no further, and half collapsed in Roy's arms. He had tenderly lifted her out. "Great hopping watermelons," cried the farmer. "If it ain't a day for wonders. This must be the lad's sister he told us about, and you think she flopping down on her sky like a 17-year-old locust." Peggy was quickly her usual strong, self-reliant self again. With indignation blazing in her kind eyes, she heard Roy's account of the happenings of the night. At its conclusion she announced with decision, "We must defeat them, Roy." "Yes, but how? There's only a scaffed half-hour before starting time, if you said they'd changed it." "Even so, you can make it. You must take these clothes and get into the airplane and fly back to the track. If you go alone, the plane will be light, and you can make it in time. But you, Peggy, I guess I can borrow a dress from Mrs. Ingalls here," said the girl briskly. "Of course you can," put in Miss Ingalls, but surveying her own ample form rather doubtfully the while. "You can give her one of daughter Jennings' dresses," said the farmer. "Then that's settled. Thank you," said Peggy with characteristic decision. They entered the farmhouse, from which a few seconds later Roy emerged, clad in the garment his sister had donned a short time before. He clambered into the airplane amid the admiring comments of the farmhands, who by this time had come in from the field, drawn by the wonderful airship, and stood all about it gaping and wondering. Peggy, in a dress belonging to her farmer's daughter, who was away on a visit, stepped quickly to Roy's side as, after glancing at the clock attached to the front of the airplane, he started the engine. As it started its uproarious song, the farmer hands jumped back in a fright, but Peggy clasped her brother's hand. "Win that prize, Roy," she said. "I'll do my best, little sister." And that was all. But Peggy Prescott gazed a few minutes later at the fast diminishing form of the speeding airplane. She felt that all she had braved and dared that day had not been in vain. The next chapter is Chapter 10, In the Nick of Time. Thank you for experiencing this journey we have created here at LCD Productions. For more information on how to support these films and projects, visit photations.com/support. Fine art photography prints from journeys around the world can be purchased from photationsstore.com, and digital downloads of our photography and visual audiobooks is available for personal use. Commercial use is available at a different rate. Thank you for your time. I hope to see you here again.